Welcome to a very special live edition of The Business of Tattooing. In this episode, I'm taking it back to our roots and coming to you straight from Hell City, the place where this whole podcast journey really began for me back in 2018 with Electrum Radio. Today, I'm making a little history again. I brought a guest on who's not only a driving force in the industry, but someone I'm proud to call a friend. He's a brilliant artist, a smart businessman, and the man behind the new era of Skin and Ink magazine, Scott Versago. Now listen, it took some serious convincing and maybe a little bit of wine to get him to sit down for this. But once he did, the stories you're about to hear, you're going to get the real Scott. So sit back, grab a drink. Let's dive into an episode that's about passion, resilience, and what it really means to shape the future of tattooing. Welcome to The Business of Tattooing, the podcast that goes beyond the ink to dive deep into the industry, the hustle, and what it really takes to succeed in the world of tattooing. I'm Rob Smead, founder of Electrum Supply, and your guide through the business side of this ever-evolving art form. Each week, we'll break down the latest trends, tackle the challenges artists face, and sit down with industry pros to talk shop, unfiltered and straight to the point. Whether you're an artist, a shop owner, or just someone who loves the craft, this is the podcast built for you. So, sharpen your skills, level up your business, and let's get to work. This is The Business of Tattooing. All right, well, we are here at Hell City 2025, and I am in the Skin and Ink booth with a very special friend of mine, Mr. Scott Versago, the owner of Skin and Ink magazine.
Thanks for having me, buddy.
Yeah, man, thanks for having me and being on the podcast with me. What brings you to Hell City this year? What do you got going on with the magazine?
I come out to Hell City to be inspired by artists, to find new talent, people doing different shit that isn't regurgitated.
When did you take ownership of Skin and Ink magazine?
I bought Skin and Ink in 2018.
And what made you interested in obtaining Skin and Ink? How did that come about?
I've been tattooing for 29 years on my own, and Skin and Ink is what inspired me to become a tattoo artist.
Okay. Way back when?
Way back when, 1996, I believe, is when I started.
Yeah, so I think I traced our history a little bit, and I think it's, back in the Ink Fusion days when doing the Comic-Cons, and that was like in the very early days of Electrum, and I think that's when we first crossed paths, and we've kind of been in contact ever since, and then you asked me to get involved with Skin and Ink magazine sometime back, and that was a big opportunity for me. And always loved Skin and Ink magazine as well. So I thought it was really cool that you became the owner of the magazine. And tell me a little bit about what makes Skin and Ink different than it did when it inspired you to want to be a tattoo artist. What's different about the magazine today under your ownership?
Well, vintage Skin and Ink is, or has been, pretty much about, it had its place, so it featured artists that, we got Joe Cap and all the, Bob Tyrell, everybody. So back before the internet, it gave us a chance to be introduced to those artists and to know who's who in the convention scene.
So what artists are inspiring you today?
Edgar Marquez, a lot of the dark artists. You can look at, any modern Skin and Ink magazine, and they're a little bit darker, more, focused on realism. I love realism, but I love all styles of art. So each magazine that I put out, I want to have as much versatility as possible. So as many different styles as I possibly can, and so I try to touch on it at least. One artist that I'm featuring for is a different style for each one.
Yeah. So I've seen you have Melanie out here taking pictures of artists doing work here at the show. Mm-hmm. I've seen you guys were at Chicago. You guys been to a lot of conventions, and you got plans to do a lot of conventions, and so you're basically coming to the shows looking for new artists that are inspiring you and feature in the magazine, and and that's really cool. Because to what you said, it's in the classic days of the tattoo magazines, that was really the only way an artist could get their name out there, was to be featured in a magazine and get their art seen all over the world through a feature in a magazine. So
Sure. So, and I walk around and I'm looking, for inspiration, because each issue of the magazine pretty much is what inspires me, and what artists am I into, which artists are in my face, which artists are catching my eye. So then I'll make a list as I'm walking around, and I'll send it to my photographers that are also walking around, and each photographer goes around and does interviews, and they'll do photo shoots with each of the tattoo artists, and that's how I pick artists from conventions.
yeah, I really love the quality of the magazine now. I mean, even the classic issues look great, but I think you've really stepped it up a lot in regards to the artistic element of the magazine. I really love the way the features are laid out, and the tattoos are displayed in the magazine, and just the narrative pieces on the artists that are featured in the magazine are written really well. I just think it's always been my favorite tattoo magazine, and it's even more so now that you're the owner of it, and having a personal relationship kind of makes it feel a little bit more special now.
Right.
So I think it's really cool what you're doing. For people that don't know, because I feel like a lot of people don't know, who is Scott Versago, the artist? What's your lineage? Where are you from?
Whew. Man, that's a deep-ass story, man.
Let's get into it.
Started tattooing in 1996 under Jimmy Hammerlocker in Canton, Ohio. I was his first apprentice. He's an amazing artist, and he's just a wonderful mentor. And today, even I looked at him for inspiration. He's a great dude. So after apprenticing with Jimmy, I think so I started my apprenticeship when I was 16, and when I was, I think, 18, I came home from the tattoo shop, and I opened the door to my apartment, and everything is black and dripping, and my fucking apartment burned down while I was at work that day, and I was like, what the fuck? And I'm looking straight ahead, and there's this fucking hole through the wall, and this whole family like looking back at me like, you fucking ruined our life. And I'm like, what the fuck? So I just pulled the door shut and went and got my car and started fucking driving, and ended up in Columbus, and lived here for a couple months. And then when I was here, this is maybe somewhere between 94 and 96. So I met a bunch of tattoo artists at the time that were traveling around the country, going from convention to convention. And so I just started traveling with them. And I moved to Key West and lived in Key West for a while. And tattooing was illegal in Key West back then. So I worked at a shop that was on the next island over called Marathon Tattoos. And I made the most money I've ever made in my life, even to today. I made the most money there doing stupid tourist tattoos. And
Just because of the volume that you were doing.
hell yeah, it was over $3,000 a day. And in Key West, spring break tattoos.
Just doing little flashbangers.
Yep. And it was beautiful. It was wonderful until the hurricane started coming. And then we took off and ended up moving to New Orleans for a while, and then ended up in San Diego. So I lived in San Diego for 4 years, and I loved it. It was fucking beautiful there. It's perfect. The weather is the same every day of the year.
Yeah.
72 in the day and 68 at night.
What shop did you work at there?
I actually did not. My tattoos were pretty fucking shitty back then, and I didn't stand a chance. The whole, San Diego was pretty much the birthplace of tattooing. Back then. So it was definitely oversaturated, and I didn't stand a chance making a living in San Diego. I quit tattooing in San Diego, and I actually made my living playing bass in a band, in a funk band.
Really?
In San Diego, yeah. Yeah.
So you did that for the whole 4 years you were out there?
I did. 4 years making a living playing bass in a band.
Wow.
And then.
And so you weren't even thinking about tattooing during that 4 years?
Right. So then one day I got a phone call from an ex-girlfriend, and I was like, how the fuck did you get my number? And she's like, your mom gave it to me. And I was like, all right. She's like, somebody wants to say hi to you. And I'm like, what? And he got on the phone. He's like, hi, Daddy. I'm like, oh, fuck. I found out I had a 4-year-old. So, yep. I dropped everything and got on a Greyhound bus and came all the way back to Ohio. And I don't know how, but somehow I landed in Akron. And I was homeless. I had nothing. I didn't even own pants. And because fucking wore shorts all the time in San Diego. So I hung out at a 24-hour restaurant in Akron called Country Kitchen. Survived by eating salads and French fries, and then little by little, this amazing thing started happening. Like a community of like artists and writers and poets started growing around me, and everybody started hanging out there around me, feeding off of each other and doing art, and it was the most amazing environment, because every night at 3 a.m, like the college kids would all empty in there, drunk as hell, and then all the drag queens from the inner belt would come in the gay bar, and they would just clash and just fight in this beautiful orchestra of chaos. It was so inspiring and so funny, and it really generated so much art at that time. And so I made a bunch of friends and started living on their couches and hanging out at this restaurant every night, and got a job at BP, working at BP, starting to build my life back together. And then one night this guy comes up to me and he's like, so I've seen your art, and you're pretty fucking amazing. I just started a new company. Would you be interested in doing a logo for it? And I'm like, hell yeah. He's like, I'll give you a few $100, and I'm like, fuck yeah. That'd buy a lot of salads and French fries. So then I did a logo. He loved it so much, he gave me my own office with computers and printers and all the software and everything I could possibly want and need, and said I could come and go whenever I wanted. And so I'm like, sweet. And it was fun. So I started going to this office every night, and this is 1996, so the internet is brand new. This is the day of AOL, dial-up and shit.
Yeah.
And so Photoshop is in version 1. But I learned something unique, that I had a very spongy brain. I could sit down and learn a new programming language faster than I could read a book. And so I taught myself everything. I taught every programming language I could possibly learn. 3D modeling, animation, graphic design, web design, video production. I learned everything. And I started doing side projects for that guy's company, little by little. And then over maybe the course of a year, I did side projects for him and worked at BP and still couch surfed. And then so one day Ed was working at BP, and this drunk guy comes in trying to buy beer, and I wouldn't sell him beer, so he punched me in the face. And I was like, fuck this place, fuck you, and fuck you, and fuck you. I don't fucking need this shit anymore, fuck you. And I quit. And I went home and fucking put together a cover letter and resume and sent it out to 15 companies, and then I went to bed. And so I woke up and 15 companies called me, and I went from making $725 an hour to over $100,000 a year overnight.
Wow.
and had an office in downtown Cleveland as a visual communications designer. And so then over the next 10 years, I worked my way up the ladder, doing, work for a lot of high-end tech companies. Like I did stuff for Microsoft, Adobe, did graphic design stuff for the Cleveland Browns, marketing for the Cleveland Browns, IBM, and then that company put me on a project for MCI WorldCom, kind of designing and building all of the architecture for their intranet, connecting all of their the countries together for MCI WorldCom at the time. And I think there was 2,700 individual, pages and everything that I built for that company. And but at that point, I became known as like the go-to guy for developing intranet architecture, and that kind of skyrocketed that career, and I kept climbing the ladder. But then I discovered that I could give myself raises by jumping to other companies, and so little by little I worked my way up the ladder until I became director of visual communications, and yeah. So,
How old were you in '96?
yeah, I don't even know.
Still pretty young.
Yeah, probably 21.
Yeah, yeah.
I think. So
that's pretty remarkable to have a career like that at such a young age.
right. And I dropped out of high school, got my GED. So I did all of this with no college background, but I had filled my brain with technologies that nobody else was working with at the time, and I was an asset. So, so then I started, jumping companies to give myself raises, and I think at this time I'm making $162,000 a year. And then I worked for this company in Boston called Keen, and then they put me on the City of Cleveland project, so I'm back in Cleveland again. I did everything for the City of Cleveland, so I built their intranet, all of their branding, so all the logos that you see for the City of Cleveland today, I designed all those and built all of those. I did their website, all of their marketing and advertising, and yep. So I headed up that team, and there was 5 of us, and after a year on that project, we were like, man, we just made $5 million for this company. We can do this shit for ourselves and make a ton of money.
Right.
So then we started our own marketing and advertising firm. So we built that. We were doing business-to-business marketing for about 3 years, and then so we're doing like all the annoying radio commercials and television commercials, and internet is still kind of climbing, but radio and television are still very pertinent at the time.
Sure.
And so then we bought a recording studio. So to bring that functionality in-house and make more money. And then but by doing so, we assumed all of their like musical clients that they had. So from maybe like 98 on, I did like all Bone Thugs and Harmony, all of their CD covers, all their marketing and advertising, all their, T-shirts and graphics, and Kelly Clarkson and a bunch of, just tons of music. So we slowly evolved into a music marketing company, and until, that company ended up being bought by a large production firm in Nashville. And so my business partners ended up moving to Nashville with the company, and I was fighting for custody of my oldest son at the time, so I stayed and retained 1/4 of the marketing company, which is all the web hosting and web portion of the business. And I still have that company today.
Oh, okay.
And so, then I'm just sitting on my hands doing nothing. And and living off that money, pretty much. And so then maybe looking at all the shitty tattoos on my arms, and I'm like, man, I need to fix this shit. I need to finish it, you know. So I bought all new tattoo equipment, and I sat down to actually tattoo myself, and I was like, oh fuck, and it's been way over 10 years. I don't remember shit about tattooing. So I had a friend that worked at a tattoo shop in Canton. So I started going there and hanging out and watching to see what all the artists are doing. Kind of trying to absorb that shit. Just being sneaky. And then I just bought that tattoo shop.
Okay.
I mean,
You just one day decided to buy it?
I just fucking bought it. And the main artist, you know, he was like, you can't fucking buy your way back into tattooing. And I'm like, I did. So he got pissed off and he quit and went down the road and started his own tattoo shop, but I didn't care. So I didn't know shit about, you know, running a tattoo business or anything, especially, you know, I don't even remember. So this is probably 2000, maybe 2002, 2003, somewhere around there now. And this is your typical biker tattoo shop. You walk in, there's flash on the walls, pick your design, get it tattooed.
Sure.
And, but then I realized I had something none of the other tattoo shops had. I had the most amazing background of marketing and advertising, you know, so I used all of that knowledge to build my studio from the ground up. So my first tattoo shop, I did everything free. I did free tattoos for a whole month. My wife fucking hated me, and she was very against everything I was doing because, you know, she was very accustomed to that suit and tie life that I had before.
Sure.
And so she was just, what is this, you know, biker tattoos shit, you know? So, but
She thought you were going through a midlife crisis or something, probably.
maybe it was definitely a 180.
Yeah,
you know,
yeah.
So, but so yeah, I did free tattoos for a month, and I built my reputation. I built my knowledge of tattooing, and you know, so it was like riding a bike, I guess, at that point. And so after a month, I built up a portfolio, and that shop was doing good. And then I did a little a guest spot at a studio in Akron, and it was the tiniest little studio called Pain Hate Pain, just a sliver of a shop, but this place was fucking awesome because there was no flash on the walls. It was a little art gallery that they had revolving art shows on the walls of, you know, of local artists, and I'm like, this is what fucking tattooing should be. It should be an art gallery environment. And so closed my shop down, came up to Akron and started Akron Inc. with the owner of Pain Hate Pain, and you know, over the next few years built that up into the #1 studio in Akron. And then one day he came in and he was like, I sold the shop to another shop, and they're bringing all their own artists, their traditional style tattoos. Everybody's fired. So
Well, you were an owner of the shop too, right?
I was not.
Okay. You helped him start the shop.
I did.
Gotcha.
And so I'm back to sitting on my hands doing nothing, and I'm like, fuck, what do I do?
But you were fully immersed in tattooing again at this point.
Right. And so I remembered a client that I had worked on that when I was tattooing him, I talked to him about what he did for a living, and he said he owned an investment company, and I'm like, oh. So I went through all my paperwork and found him, and I'm like, called him up, and I'm like, hey, Eric, I want to fucking start my own shop. And he's like, sweet, let's go look for a building. So went and looked for a building and found a building, bought it, and started my tattoo studio, Empire Inc. That was 17 years ago now. This is the 18th year So maybe for the first 8 years, we were doing just regular. I just did regular basic tattoos. I didn't do portraits. I looked at portrait as being the pinnacle of tattooing. So I never attempted it, but I always wanted to learn. So I decided to learn how to do portraits, and I did it by coming up with a special, leaning back on my guerrilla marketing background. And so I did 50 portraits at $50 a piece, and they sold in just a couple hours. Just sold out, and I was like, holy shit, I just made $3,000 off of, in 2 hours.
How did you advertise that? Was it just a local thing?
Just on Facebook. I just posted 50, I created a graphic 50/50, and I chose all the designs I wanted to do, which was, I'm into horror a lot, so I did horror portraits, and that's how I wanted to learn. And my first, handful of designs were very basic, so very kind of like Banksy stencil style, and so the first I was simple, and then I added shading a little bit, and then I just kept progressing until I got
adding a little more difficulty on everyone.
Yeah, and teaching myself. So, and this is it only took a month to build my portfolio, build my knowledge, and build my reputation. At the end of that month, I was definitely known as like the portrait guy in my whole area. So I built up that reputation, and yeah.
Before that, what kind of style were you?
In Ohio, you don't have the luxury of kind of specializing in a particular style of tattooing. If you want to make money, you have to be able to do anything that walks in the door. So I did everything, every style. And
were there other portrait artists in your area at the time?
Sure, and I would always hire, a specific artist who specialized in doing portraits to do portrait tattoos that came in. So, yeah. So then one day this guy came in for a consultation. My reputation for doing portraits had kind of traveled around, and I started getting booked out. So now I'm booked out about 3 months in advance. And this guy came in for the consultation, and came in with his son, and they come back into my room, and the son hands me a folded up piece of paper, and I start unfolding this sheet of paper, and while the dad is telling me the story about his tattoo that he wants me to fix, and I I unfold this paper, and on the left side of the paper is a picture of his mom, and on the right side is a picture of the dad showing off his shitty portrait tattoo that he got, and then underneath is some verbiage that the kid had made. It said, "This is my mom. She died in a house fire, and this is my dad who got a tattoo to remember her by." And it became known as the world's worst tattoo. And so it was a flyer the kid made to promote or to raise money to get his dad's tattoo fixed. And so the dad shows me the tattoo, and so I end up I recognized it, but it didn't like dawn on me the weight of this tattoo. So they lived in the middle of nowhere and didn't really have I don't believe they had internet even at where they lived, and so he didn't know that his tattoo had become known as the worst portrait tattoo in the world.
Sure. It was already a viral tattoo.
It was for about 6 years. It was the world's worst portrait tattoo. I set up an appointment and scheduled him 3 months out, and then he came back in 3 months, and I, did the tattoo. Took me about 2.5 hours to do the tattoo, and when I was done, I gave it to him for free, and he was very happy. He said, I can't thank you enough. It looks so much more like my wife, man. I appreciate it. And he's just in tears, and I said, I'm collecting stories. This is an amazing story. And so I went home and put together a little blurb and posted the picture up online.
The before and after.
Yep. And then I went to bed, and I woke up the next morning to my oldest son and my assistant standing above me going, "You need to wake the fuck up right now." And I'm like, "What?" Like, Fox News is at the studio, CNN is at the studio, Huffington Post is at the studio. They want to fucking interview you right now, dude. And I'm like, "What's going on?" And they're like, "Your shit went viral. It's on the front page of fucking Tokyo News. It's in Sweden and Germany. It's in Japan. It's on, the front page of Yahoo. It's the #1 story on Reddit. Our website got over 3 million people to it overnight." And I'm like, "What the fuck?" And I sat up on the edge of my bed, and I'm like, "Fuck. Now I'm going to do portraits and cover-ups for the rest of my life."
So that moment changed your life quite a bit.
It did. And, looking back, it is definitely a blessing, but it's also a curse. So, I don't know what my tattoo career would have been had it not been pigeonholed into doing portraits and cover-ups forever. I was very much into new school and very much into, biomech and bioorganic, tattooing a lot. But very much into horror a lot. So I don't know. There's always those what ifs, what would have become. But I don't regret it because I leveraged everything to point my life to where it is now, I guess.
You told me last night when we were talking that kind of triggered some anxiety in you that moment, and talk about that a little bit. I mean, how did that affect you in such a way?
All right, so kind of immediately at the time, I'm on I'm literally on fucking every news channel on TV and all over the internet, everywhere. So I go to as simple, I went to the mall and I'm at the mall and somebody recognized me and they're like, "Holy fuck, it's Scott Versago. I saw you on the news." And then they start asking me questions, and then somebody else comes over and they're asking questions, and then it's literally a crowd of people that is surrounding me, and
it's just very overwhelming.
It was, and that happened twice, and I'm like, "I just want to fucking buy a cable."
Yeah, you're just like, "Leave me alone."
Right, yeah. So it did create anxiety. So at that point, I want to retreat from the shadows, and I retreat from the spotlight and kind of move back into the shadows, and so I want to make my tattoo artists that work for me be famous. I don't want to be famous at that point.
But I just want to do art.
I just want to do art. But yeah. But I'm still smart, so I leverage that fame and I leverage that business to create other companies. So and creating companies is like throwing mud at the wall, seeing what sticks.
Right.
So I think at one point I owned 12 different companies, and we owned a concert club and bar. We ran that for 10 years. It did amazing. We ended up closing that down. We had a crowdfunding company. But out of everything, the 4 companies that I have are what stuck to the wall. So those are the ones that were profitable. So yep. Skin and Ink magazine, the tattoo studio, I own a publishing company, a comic book company, and the marketing and advertising firm that I've had for ever.
And the comic book company's healthy today. That's doing good too.
Yeah.
Everything's good. So how do you have enough time to, focus on all that stuff and be effective at everything?
Well, I've built all of my businesses so that they run on their own, and that's the key. So you build everything so that they are fully automated. I have the luxury of doing nothing at all if I don't want to, and it took me 30 years to get to that point of not, of being able to make a living without doing anything if I want. But I'm a control freak, and I try and, do as much as I can because they're my babies.
Yeah.
You know?
Yeah, you definitely have a ton of passion for everything that you're doing, that's for sure.
Yeah.
Like I said, I can definitely see, you can feel your passion in the magazine for sure. And I was even talking to you yesterday, and you're like, oh yeah, I'm just a control freak, and and I'm like, how it looks really good and everything, and you're like, yeah, just because I got to own all the elements of this and make sure. And a lot of that has to do with your marketing background, I'm sure.
Yep.
So what even got you interested in marketing in the first place? Like what sparked that interest?
Man, I fell into it. So I don't know. I just, back when I had that office that I could go to every night and learn, it was just fun. It's just another form of creative outlet. So there's nothing different from programming than there is from, doing a tattoo. It's still putting things together, creating something, and having that serotonin, like, oh, it just fucking did something. That's awesome.
Yeah.
And just having that excitement of it coming together.
Yeah, and then it's really cool how it's interesting here in the origin story because you talk about the cafe and how you were eating salads and French fries, and then all these artists started gravitating into the place, and it became kind of an artistic community in there, and that's really kind of circumstantial situations that led you down that path, more or less.
Sure.
And networking and connections that you made. Super cool. I just I didn't even know that much about you. I didn't know you had that many layers even coming into this today. Like, I just learn more and more about you every time we talk.
I know. There's so many stories, man.
Yeah, it's you're so interesting. It's like it's really cool to hear these things. And
cool.
The business of tattooing is brought to you by Electrum Supply, the industry leader in high-quality tattoo supplies designed by artists for artists. Whether you need premium stencil products, top-tier cartridges, or game-changing aftercare, Electrum has you covered with innovative, artist-tested solutions you can trust. Want to elevate your work? Head over to electrumsupply.com and stock up on the best gear in the business. And because you're a listener of the business of tattooing, use code podcast10 at checkout for 10% off your next order. Stay sharp, stay stocked, and stay ahead with Electrum Supply. Yeah, talk about the comic book stuff. That's another interesting. So what's that? What are you doing with that?
Well, the comic books. It started out as I'm selling horror novels, so like Stephen King novels, and then but they were slow. But then I discovered that children's books sold really fucking good, and so I started selling children's books, and then I discovered comic book people are fucking crazy, and they will just spend ridiculous amounts of money on comic books. So, so basically, what I just started selling, mass comic books on Amazon. I had to jump through all the hoops to be able to sell Marvel and sell DC. So you had to get licensed to just sell those titles. And so basically, it's not a comic book company that I produce comics. I'm a distributor.
Okay. So just like going to a brick and mortar comic book store, only you're doing it on a larger scale.
Right. And so, what I discovered is that the comic book people are so crazy that I couldn't keep enough stock. So I bought all of the comic books from every comic book store from, all the way maybe 100-mile radius around me. And literally
You were just going buying their inventory?
I buy their whole inventory, and I couldn't like keep enough in there. I had to like throttle it by increasing the price so high that it pushes the sales down, and only then could I keep enough inventory. But at this point, I'm going and literally buying entire stocks of comic books, and then having to, package everything, ship it all myself, and with help, of course. So eventually, what I did, I'm a programmer. I think smarter than working harder, I guess. So I ended up creating a whole program, a system that so someone goes to Amazon, for example, and they type in comic books, and everything that comes up on the first page when you type in comic books, I sell all of that shit. And then the system I created, so they go and they place an order on Amazon. It triggers my program that will automatically go out and find the products online. It'll purchase it from the third party, and then it is shipped and packaged and sent off, and it does it all automatically. It's all a program, everything. And so I don't do anything but sit back and collect money from that company.
Wow.
And it's just, so I went from it being very time consuming and having to worry about keeping stock to creating a system that did all the work for me. And that's only part of it. So I also, create, I created a code that will take, basically every sale, every comic book sale that I do, it will plant cookies in people's browsers, and then everything that you go and you shop for the next 30 days off of Amazon, I'm making money off of. Doesn't even have anything to do with comic books. So if it's you're shopping for toilet paper in 29 days from now, I'm making money off of that. And if everything that you buy 30 days after, you don't even have to buy a comic book. You just click on a link and put that cookie in there. I'm making money off of everything that you buy.
Really?
Off of Amazon for a month.
Wow.
And that's only one person. Multiply that by hundreds.
And that's what happens.
That's another. So this company is called Hydra Print. So it's a monster with many heads. Comic books is only one part of it. There's also a clothing company. There's also, so that. Yeah.
Freaking smart, man.
Yeah. Clothing company ended up getting shut down. Snoop Dogg actually murdered me.
Really?
Yeah, he did.
What was the clothing company?
So I was basically just selling, my paintings. So I did paintings of, like I did painting of Lil Wayne in Victorian era garb, Snoop Dogg, and all the classic rappers in like Victorian garb, and I'm selling. Lil Wayne loved it. He shared that shit, and it went crazy. That went viral on its own. Sold a lot of money. I think I made $400,000 just on the clothing stuff in 1 year. And
then they never came and tried to claim any of that or anything. Wayne was cool with that.
Yeah, no. But Snoop Dogg was not cool. He was like, he sent me, I ended up getting 4 cease and desist from Snoop Dogg. So I'm like, well, it didn't say Snoop Dogg. It said Calvin Brody.
Sure.
Or Brodus. Yeah, Calvin Brodus is his name. Anyways, so it ended up getting shut down. That's all right. I am grateful that I did not get sued.
Yeah, for sure.
So, but it was all original art. It's just it looked like Snoop Dogg.
Yeah. I always wondered how that worked because, like, there was just recently a big controversy in the industry, maybe last year or the year before that, where Kat Von D got sued or something for a portrait tattoo that she did of Miles Davis or something like that.
Sure.
And that sparked this big conversation about like copyright and what if public imagery was able to be used in art and resold and all. So I think there's a lot of gray area around that. And I always had heard that if you could use images in the public domain if you changed them enough to where like,
right.
I guess I don't really know how that works. I just always have tried to stay away from that stuff as much as I could just because I don't know. But
right, yeah.
Yeah, I'm not as smart as you by any chance, but like, damn, dude, it's just crazy. Crazy. So the comic book business is just still doing its thing.
Yeah, I don't even have to worry about it. I don't even have to like peek at it. I just collect money for it. That's it.
Wow, man. And then you got other things going. The marketing company you said is still going?
Yeah.
So how's that work? Is that automatic too, or do you have people working for that?
No,
or
fully automated.
So who does all the work?
I mean,
programs?
Yep, programs. So I build programs.
So you were doing AI before AI was even mainstream, because it's like all AI kind of related stuff.
No, that's not AI. It's just, so.
Well, it's like an automatic system.
Yeah, but it's still not AI, I guess. It's not smart. It doesn't make smart decisions to change things. So it only
just does what you tell it to do.
Does what I tell it to do, and then I guess when I end up reaching a point that I'm overwhelmed or I, then I'll farm it out to other people to help me at some point. But, yeah.
So how do you keep? You obviously got to have a crazy accountant and bookkeeper on your hands to keep track of all the moving parts.
Yeah, we have multiple accountants, multiple lawyers. Yeah.
Dang, dude, that's insane.
Yeah.
You're blowing my mind, man. Like I
got trademark lawyers, everything. Yeah.
Every time I talk to you, I learn more and more, and I'm just like, dang. I didn't even think it could get any more intense with you, and it does. And it's just, it's amazing because you're such a humble person. You would never know.
I'm very quiet.
Yeah, you'd never know that. Like you said, you're the man behind the curtain.
Yeah, definitely.
That's cool, man. Let's talk about your passion for horror. I think you were showing me your horror collection earlier, and that's really cool.
Yeah, I love horror. I've got an incredible collection. I think I believe I have one of the largest collections of original screen-used horror movie props. I've got props from Saw, Hostel. I have Hellraiser. I have Aliens. I just have a tremendous amount of props.
Yeah, screen-used props from horror movies.
Halloween 2. I've got Nightmare on Elm Street. Yeah.
Yeah, you were showing me some of that stuff, and I was like, damn, that's really cool, man. And what other kind of stuff do you collect? You said you got, you were telling me about your art collection. That was blowing my mind, too. You got a Picasso.
I do. I got a Picasso. I've got 5 Salvador Dali paintings. I've got 15 Andy Warhols. I think I have over 50 Derek Hess paintings. Yeah.
So, outside of the viral portrait tattoo, what's been some of your most memorable moments in your tattoo career?
All right. So, most recently, actually, it's not that it was a memorable moment. It was just a surprising story that popped out about my past that made me kind of reflect on everything. So, was at Cranberry Tattoo Expo outside of Pittsburgh there in November, and Jessica Haney won Best of Show at that show, and she went up on stage at the end of the show and accepted her trophy, and she told this story about how the tattoo industry used to be a lot different than it is today. Today it's very very competitive, so everybody's out to just fucking beat each other, and But she said back then it was about family. It was about family reunion. So at this particular show she was talking about was the first incarceration festival, and that at that show she said Scott Versago and I won 100% of all of the trophies at that show, and nobody was pissed off about it. Everybody was just really happy and really excited, and it was just so much fun. Everybody was excited to see who was going to win more trophies, her or I. And so at the end of the show, they brought Jessica and I up on stage and to reveal who won the final trophy, and it ended up that I won the last trophy for it was Best Oriental, and I went up and accepted the trophy. I ended up winning one more trophy than she did, and I took that. She said I accepted the trophy, and then I went up to the judges' table and took a Sharpie and scratched out where it said Oriental and wrote friend and handed it to her, and on stage in front of everybody, and everybody applauded and clapped, and I didn't remember this shit at all. I had no recollection of this happening at all, and but I'm like, that's a fucking great story, man.
It was like an out-of-body experience.
It was amazing, and you know what? And that is what I want. I want the magazine to get back to. I want the whole industry to get back to that, to where it's family. You know, people come to the conventions and they're not, you know, worried about, you know, fucking the guy next to him. You know, they want to.
Everybody's rooting each other on.
Yeah.
Supporting each other.
I want the magazine to be an award system, pretty much. You know, back in the day, to be featured in a tattoo magazine was like, that's how, it was like the pinnacle of your career. You know, you're like, fuck, I made it, you know?
Yeah.
And then the internet happened. And so, but it's something different to be able to have a magazine in your hand. And to be able to frame that shit and put it on your wall. You know, you can't frame your how many likes you got on a post.
Right.
You know,
right.
So this is special still.
The thing I always like about magazine features is that, well, I kind of like it and I kind of don't. You probably like it because it's a marketing thing, but I remember when I first started Electrum, I had a couple features in, like, Total Tattoo magazine was one, and there was another European magazine that we had some features on with Electrum. And you'd get these emails or letters in the mail, and they'd say, like, oh, we want to, you know, plaque, you know, send you a plaque with your magazine art. And I thought it was cool. You know, I bought into it a couple times. Yeah. It was super cool. I've still got a couple of those magazine articles hanging on the wall in the studio, and I still look at those and I'm proud of them. You know, so I get what you're saying. Yeah. It's a really cool thing, and like I said, I really love what you've done with the magazine. I'm sitting here looking at the covers of them. We're sitting right here in the Skin and Ink booth here, and you've got all these spread out here, and we were looking at them yesterday, and we were talking about the differences between, you know, the magazines from 20 years ago versus the ones from current issues, and even just looking at the differences in the layouts and the covers of them. And, well, you know, how you were talking yesterday about how, you know, tattoo magazines used to be more like a biker magazine, kind of a more risque thing. Oh, and yeah, let's talk a little bit about the history of Skin and Ink and how it even got started.
Skin and Ink started in 1992, actually, by Larry Flint as an offshoot of Hustler magazine. And so I guess back in the day, you know, people were calling for more tattooed girls to be featured in Hustler magazine, but I think Larry Flint fucking hated tattooing, so they ended up creating a whole new magazine. So, yeah.
And so he owned it for the whole time until you took it over, or?
No. It definitely changed hands multiple times, so I think, well, there's... Yeah, I don't even know. And it moved. Like the headquarters was it was in New Jersey and New York. It ended up in L.A. and I think it started in Cincinnati with Larry Flint and ended up back in Ohio with me.
So what's your future with the magazine? Where do you see it? You see it being a long-term project of yours? You're pretty involved in it today.
Yeah, well, it's definitely become my legacy. So I'm gonna hold it on my shoulders until I can't hold it on my shoulders anymore.
Is it going to be one of the things that you eventually try to automate as well, or is it something that you want to stay intimately involved with throughout the life of it?
Well, I've definitely so when I first took on the magazine, we were losing so much money. The cost of being able to put out an issue of the magazine is probably about 50 grand per issue, and so that's to put it in Walmart and Barnes and Noble and Target and everywhere, and so and they'll keep the magazines on the shelf for maybe a month, maybe 6 weeks, and then whatever doesn't sell during that time, they just throw away, and so we lose that money. We don't know what the metrics are on what we make or what we lose for a year, So it was definitely leaking horribly, and then my along with learning how a magazine company works, learning how to do all of that shit myself, learning everything from, not just putting together a magazine and being able to rally and wrangle all of the different cogs, all the people around the world that contribute to it, even yourself. You're a cog to each issue. Um, so even even with learning how to put together the magazine, I also had to learn how to market a magazine. I had to learn how to promote a magazine. I had to learn everything that comes with owning a magazine company. And then I take on a lot, so I'm doing as much as I possibly can, but then at some point I get overwhelmed, and then I start delegating. So that comes back to me being a control freak, and I could always go and have other people do everything from but I don't know, maybe I'm cheap and it's easier, and I save a lot more money by learning and doing it myself until I'm faced with a point of where I have to buy my time, from so yeah, then I have to, how do I promote it? How do I get the magazine in front of people? So I'm not rich. I wish I was rich.
Yeah,
I wish I had millions of dollars to put into being able to promote it and advertise it. So I have to be able to,
and not have to worry about losing that money.
right. So
Right.
So I have to fall back on my marketing and advertising knowledge and experience, and have to use guerrilla marketing to be able to do all of that work for me and save me money by using other people's networks. So people like yourself. So you have an incredible network of people that are loyal to you, people that love your products, and so by including you in the magazine, then you you are invested in your work and what you're doing, and so then you're promoting it. You're shouting it out to your fans, like, hey, check out what I did. It's part of this magazine, which is a project pretty much, and then so I'm saving money by having you do my advertising for me, and I take that and I replicate it for each of the artists that I feature as well. So each artist is sharing it with their fans. So not only am I choosing artists that are inspiring to me, I'm choosing artists that have a pretty good solid fan base that will that will help me spread the word of the magazine. And then, our cover model, whoever it is, we will choose. I guess back in the vintage days of Skin and Ink, they just chose pretty girls and with shitty tattoos. And so I didn't want that. And I didn't want just girls on the cover with shitty tattoos. I wanted, girls with fucking good tattoos, but not just girls with good tattoos. I wanted, the girls to be tattoo artists. So a lot of the girls that are on our covers are actually tattoo artists, so that when we do the features on the inside, it's not just pretty girls, it's pretty girls and their fucking amazing work.
And we're connected to the industry.
Yeah.
Yeah. That's super cool. I'm honored to be a part of the magazine, and like I said, I love what you've done with it, and I love the spotlight that you're putting on artists. And I really, I grew up in I've been around a long time. Back in the day, there was tattoo magazines all over the tattoo shops. Mm-hmm. I mean, that was a common thing. You don't see it so much anymore, even for clients to come in a shop and have a tattoo magazine sitting in a waiting room is a pretty rare thing these days. So I love to promote the magazine because I would love to see more of that again. I would love to see more of those magazines hit people's hands. And I still love reading magazines. I love, I feel like it's to me, it's a good break and a relief from digital technology because it wears me out so much, and it's nice to actually pick that physical paper copy of a magazine up and look at it. And I was going to Barnes and Nobles and buying Skin and Ink, every issue that came out. But I do that with a lot of things. I love art magazines. I used to get Juxtapose magazine all the time, and those magazines were super cool. And I also have a very strong passion for marketing and advertising, so I just love seeing that printed media in general. And super cool. I love comic books. I have a massive comic book collection, so I absolutely understand what you're saying. With comic book people will spend stupid amounts of money. I have to stay out of comic book stores now because I'd be broke, I used to go to this comic book store every freaking week and spend $250 on every issue that hit the stand, Oh, and comic book people are really smart. DC and Marvel are really smart with the way they do shit.
Right.
They spread these freaking things out in 20 issues, these stories, so you can't miss a fucking issue because you get a gap in the story. So you got to go every freaking week and buy a new issue. And it's good. So yeah, this is cool, man. I noticed you're doing a lot more shows now. You got people out here, like I said, taking pictures, and you're meeting a lot of artists. And what other things you got planned?
Well, I like we've been connecting with a lot of, even here at Hell City. So talking with you and Joe Cap last night, and everybody, all their ideas. I'd like to, I don't know, kind of get more involved and grab people's ideas and how do we bring it all together into one? I mean, everybody has so much to kind of contribute and to bring to the table, but it's so fragmented, and I just want to figure out how, to create it, to bring it together in a way that it is amazing for everybody. So we got Fudd doing our YouTube channel. He's going around doing studio tours. Melanie's doing studio tours. So we're trying to expand into more video content.
Yeah, I like the way you frame that, because I think, well, first of all, you said you'd like to see the industry get back to more of supporting one another and becoming more like family-based again like it was. That resonates because, we sat in the bar last night, like you said, talking with all these artists till like 2 o'clock in the morning and just, listening to everybody's. It's a lot of fear, I think, I hear coming out of people, and uncertainty about the way the industry is today and what things are happening in the industry and in the world. And, of course, we've seen, you just said a few minutes ago that we're in a tattoo recession right now. I think a lot of artists are definitely feeling that. Some more than others for sure. A lot depending where you're at geographically, I think, is driving a lot of that. What the economic state is in your particular area. But I like what you framed right there. It's like how do we get all of this out in the surface and start working on relieving some of this tension in the industry to get people more united. And I see it too, even on the manufacturing side of things. We've tried to bring ink manufacturers together and collaborate numerous times, and it just always seems to be a lot of mistrust and fear and paranoia around those kinds of things. So it'd be interesting to see if there's a way to get around that and figure that mystery out.
Like I said, with creating so many businesses and throwing mud at the wall and seeing what sticks, businesses come from there being a hole, and you fill the hole, and the opportunity to create something out of everything that is so like fragmented here, and bring it all together, is pretty incredible. We just have to put our minds to it.
Yeah. There's a ton of people. There's a ton of great ideas floating around in this, small space in this room right now. And it's just like we heard a lot of it last night when we were talking in the bar. And you're right. How do you bring that to a reality and make that stuff happen? I don't know. Even going back to the issue that we did the talk on the education piece. That ended up being kind of a big controversial thing for a minute. That's a good example of that division. And it was interesting though, because when I reread, and we could talk about it a little bit, but when I reread the restructured article, the way that you framed it, I was going through there and I was reading and I was listening and, I was taking in everybody else's opinion, like on both sides of the argument.
Right.
And my summation at the end of the whole thing was that, I was like, we're kind of really all saying the same thing. We're just kind of looking at it from a different perspective, but what's falling in the bucket is basically the same thing, right?
Right.
Did you get that too?
I did. I mean, you're referring to the article on gatekeeping.
Yeah.
And so, there's, people that are for gatekeeping and people against gatekeeping in the industry. And, but at the end of the day, we all just want to protect what's ours, and make the industry better. And so everybody's, just looking at it from a different perspective, but they all have the same goal.
Well, so it was interesting because after I read the article, automatically I said, I wish I wouldn't have used the term gatekeeping. Right? I think that was the trigger in that whole thing. It wasn't what I was saying. It's just people really have an issue with that particular word.
Sure.
And so I said, I should have said strengthening the gates.
Yeah.
How do we strengthen the gates? Because when I started reading everybody else's comments, I was like, well, that's all we're saying. We just want to strengthen the gates. We want to make the point of entry a little more structured and not the point of entry not so easy.
Right.
It's very easy today to get into the tattoo industry.
Sure, go to fucking Amazon and buy a shitty-ass tattoo machine and some shitty ink off of Amazon and some cartridges and tattoo yourself. Go tattoo your friends. No.
And nobody's going to stop you. No. And if you're, there's so many people out there that just don't really give a fuck about other people's opinions, and that goes like, the guy mowing my yard can open a tattoo shop and he doesn't give a shit about a 30-year veteran that has a legitimate shop next door to him, and he's not going to care what that guy thinks about his shitty point of entry. And so we have to make it hard for those people to be able to do that. And I think that's all I was really trying to get across in the article originally. But I realized that gatekeeping is a trigger word.
Yeah. And as soon as we got that article, we were like, we're going to get fucking canceled right away.
I know, you called me up.
Fucking all the old schoolers, fucking Marshall and Bob Tyrell, and everybody was just like in an uproar. Like, we can't fucking believe you're going to publish this shit. And I'm like, whoa, wait. So all right, we're going to have to come at this from a different perspective, and Skin and Ink is going to have to be neutral and then just be like we're hosting a debate, so from both sides. And so that's how we ended up restructuring the whole article.
Yeah. It turned out good. I liked it. It was very well put together at the end of it. So you made a good call on that one, and I'm glad you made the call you made. I learned a lot from that article, and it was great. And that's all I ever really try to do with the things that I'm writing is I always try to write things from a very neutral-ish standpoint because I don't have really strong opinions about things in general anyway. I just talk about whatever I'm passionate about at the moment and whatever I feel like is needs to be focused on in the industry because I'm heavily involved on the regulatory side and I see a lot of things that the everyday artist doesn't see. You know what I mean? Mm-hmm. Of what goes on behind the scenes and the strings and levers that are being pulled by people that are outside the industry, trying to get into the industry, trying to get their hands in the industry, trying to make money in the industry. And I think somebody has to be talking about that and bringing it out in the open, you know what I mean?
Yep.
And I think social media platforms make it very, very easy for people that we don't want to be in the industry to be in the industry.
Right. And then, and that was my thought last night when, I was just sitting there listening to you and Joe and I don't remember the other guy's name.
James.
Yeah. And so, listening to you guys talk and I'm thinking in my head that, you guys are pretty much saying that there needs to be some kind of a system in place that will regulate everything. And I'm just thinking, that would be wonderful if it was, contained within the industry. And but as soon as that system is created, it won't be contained within the industry. Other people will start having influence, that have nothing to do with tattooing at all, and that's where problems will start to come in.
Well, and unfortunately, I think we're already there. That's what I think a lot of people don't realize, that that's already happening.
Right.
And that's what I was trying to get across in the gatekeeping article, was the fact that it's like, hey, we're already. I can't even remember which artist it was on the opposite side of the argument, but there was something in the magazine, and I can't remember word for word how it was put. But it was the one thing in the article that stood out to me the most, and it was something about, like, we've got to protect. It was something like, we've got to keep, basically what you just said, we've got to keep that influence out. Mm-hmm. And when I read that, I was like, he doesn't realize that it's already in.
Yeah.
And that's what I realized already, you know what I mean? And that's why I felt compelled to talk about it, because it's already here and it's already happening, and that outside influence is already creeping in.
Yeah, I mean, look at Europe, and them banning particular colors.
I'm forever grateful to guys like Sean Brown, who's a representative of Eternal and Nexus, and he's the guy in the tattoo industry, working tattoo artist, knowledgeable with tattoo pigments. He's going to Washington, D.C., putting on a suit and tie, getting in a room with these guys and being the voice of the tattoo industry. And more of us need to step up to the plate and be there beside him, helping him fight that battle. And that's what I'm trying to do now. I'm trying to be more involved in that kind of stuff and just support this industry that's given me so much over the years and give back to it as much as I can, and I feel like that's my duty. And that's what I owe the industry, So that's all I'm ever trying to do. I never try to take away from the industry. I'm just always trying to give back. I feel like I always want to give twice as much back as what I've gotten out of it,
Yep.
And so, yeah, I'm grateful for the opportunities that you give me to have a voice and platform in the magazine. I'm grateful to know you and consider you a good friend of mine, and I think you're a super smart guy, and I just love getting to know more and more about you every time I talk to you. And
all my ridiculous ass stories.
Well, it's good to spend time with you, man, and just pull the curtain back a little bit and get to know the wizard.
Stop it.
I like it, dude.
It's a secret.
You can keep all your secrets you want, man. As long as I'm not gonna put you out there or anything, but. I love it. What's the next show you're doing after Hell City?
We have, Empire State show, New York City.
Yeah.
Next weekend.
Yep, I haven't been to that one in a few years. I used to go to that every year.
I believe we're in a different city every weekend for the whole year.
Are you going to all of them or as many as you can?
I am not, but I will be at as many as I can. Definitely. Yeah. I love getting out here and shaking people's hands and meeting the artists and seeing them kind of perk up when they're like, oh, Skin and Ink magazine? What? That really, it doesn't feed my ego, but it feeds my inspiration of what I'm doing has an impact.
Yeah, you don't seem like a guy that has a very big ego to me, so definitely can say that.
Thank you.
Yeah, I think you're probably one of the most humble people I know, honestly. But I'm really proud of you, man. I think what you've done here is great. I love hearing your stories. I want to come to your shop and see that big horror collection you got. See all the pictures today on your phone, but that stuff gets me going, man. I love that stuff. I miss going to the C2E2s and the Comic-Cons, and haven't done that in quite a few years either. And well, at least not for tattooing's sake. I've gone to them just as a spectator and walked around the shows, but I do miss those days when it was a crew of us nerdy, geeky dudes running around, enjoying nerdy tattoos and pop culture and comic books, and I love it, man. What's your history with art? Like, have you always been in art your whole life?
Yeah, ever since I could hold a crayon, I've been an artist.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So similar with me. It's crazy how I got into tattooing too, and I love hearing your story, and it's just great, man. I appreciate you taking time with me and agreeing to come on the podcast. It took a lot of work to get here.
I know, man. Anxiety, and I definitely am very comfortable hiding in my bubble and being the man behind the curtain.
Yeah.
And you had to fucking pull my teeth out to get me on here. So.
Well, I want everybody listening to the podcast to go pick up an issue of Skin and Ink. Let's tell people how to go find the magazine.
Yeah, so you can grab it at skinandink.com. There you go.
Go straight to the website.
Hell yeah.
Yeah, pick up an issue and check it out. Get those printed magazines.
Tag us on Instagram,
yeah.
Skin and Ink Mag.
Yeah, if you're going to be at any shows, make sure you're going to stop by the Skin and Ink magazine, introduce yourself to Scott and the crew. And
look for me at the shows. I'll walk around and meet people and shake their hands, and I'm looking for artists that inspire me, so try and inspire me, and you'll end up in the fucking magazine.
Yeah, I love it, man.
Yeah.
Well, thanks so much for coming on. We'll let you get back to work. It's getting late, so we'll wrap it up and go have some more fun and meet some more artists.
Thanks, buddy.
All right, man. That's a wrap for this episode of The Business of Tattooing. I appreciate you tuning in and being part of this journey to level up the industry one conversation at a time. If you found value in today's episode, do me a favor. Subscribe, leave a review, and share it with another artist who could use this knowledge. Got questions or topics you want me to cover? Hit me up on Instagram at NoFlashNinja or email me at rob@electrumsupply.com. And remember, tattooing is an art, but running a successful business is a skill. Keep pushing, keep learning, and I'll catch you next time on The Business of Tattooing.